Welcome to the Beauty in Battle podcast, where we talk about winning in marriage by waging a war. I'm Jason Benham. I've got my girlfriend / wife, Tori Benham, with me, and we are here to talk to you about how Satan tries to get you to fight face to face with your spouse, but God designed you to fight shoulder to shoulder against Satan so that you can win in your marriage. Fighting together draws you together. We cannot wait to jump in. So here we go. All right, we're back. We're talking emotions again. We did it last week, and this week we want to jump into some practical things that we can do that'll help us process emotions, because trapped emotions, they wreck your body, they wreck your life, they wreck your relationships. So we want to figure out how we can get to the root of these things and release those, and how it'll help you in your marriage.
Yep.
How about that, Tor?
I like it.
You like it?
But we're going to start with a joke.
I was waiting for
Before we dive in.
Before we dive in.
Okay. I was really struggling to get my wife's attention. So I sat down on the sofa and looked comfortable, and that did the trick.
What? Oh.
Sorry, my phone went black in the middle of me reading it.
I wasn't following that. Okay. So
do you get it?
That the best part of the joke was the telling of it.
Yeah, sorry. I was in the middle of reading it, and then my phone went black, and I kind of went with it.
Yeah.
But it didn't really work.
Yeah, no, it worked.
I was really struggling to get my wife's attention, so I sat down on the sofa and looked comfortable.
And then she came up and said, "You need to get busy."
Okay, I went to see the doctor about my blocked ear. Which ear is it? He asked. 2022, I replied.
Okay. Now, did somebody send those to us?
No, those I just found online.
Okay. I like it.
All right.
Good job, Tor.
Let's dive in.
To crank us up. Okay, so let's give our foundation real quick. When we're talking about emotions, dealing with emotions and dealing with unprocessed emotions, and how they can wreck you, and how what we know now is that for the most part, the emotions go somewhere in our body. There's like this list out there. You should Google it. I don't have it on me right now, but traditional Chinese medicine, where they say certain emotions go, like anger to the liver, grief to the lungs.
Yeah.
I think joy, or the antithesis of joy, goes to the heart.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I think that the reason that Chinese medicine is so accurate is because the premise of it is that we are body, soul, and spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in Western medicine, we're just interested in finding the problem, putting a Band-Aid over it, or, taking away the pain, and just medicating. Whereas Chinese medicine is more, well, what is the root cause? What is the emotion attached? And really going deep into body, soul, spirit.
Yeah.
Instead of just body.
Yeah. That's
because there's such a connection, like that. There's no way we can negate that there is a connection between body, soul, and spirit.
Right.
The Bible is very clear on that. And so I think that's why there's been such success rate with Chinese medicine over Western medicine, or Eastern medicine versus Western medicine.
Right.
And so we're just kind of diving into this and learning more. And it's been super interesting. And like you talked about, what David said in the Psalm, search me, O God, and know my heart.
Yes.
Test me and know my anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
I just think that is, from a man who was a man after God's own heart, right? That's how God talks about David in the Bible. Like that says a lot. God calls him a man after his own heart.
Right.
And this is what David is practicing.
Right.
We can
learn if there be any hurtful way inside me.
Yeah. And lead me in the way everlasting.
Yeah.
Like, this is David saying, okay, test me, show me what's inside of me, show me what's wrong, and then lead me in the way everlasting. Like, I just think it would do us so well if we did this every single morning.
Yes. And we prayed that prayer
every single day, that we start our day with that. And I think that emotions speak, right? They speak to what is inside of us. Mm-hmm. And you talked about last week how emotions are an impulse to act.
Yes.
Like they're supposed to lead us to something. And so if emotions are supposed to lead us to do something,
right.
I think that we like one of the best litmus tests to see what is inside of us and to know, and when we're searching, we're asking God to search our heart, is what's coming out of us.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
right?
You're right. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
So if you're kind of like, I don't know, I don't really know what's going on inside of me. I don't know what my emotions are lately. I don't know. Well, what have you been talking about lately? What have your outbursts been?
Yeah. What's been bothering you?
What's been bothering you? Yeah, exactly. Because, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good place to start. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do lately is what's coming out of my mouth? Because,
right.
And some of those things the Lord has really, as I begin to identify them and confess them and say, okay, so why did that come out of me? Then the Lord has been able to deal with me.
Yeah. And
lead me in the way everlasting.
That's right. And it's what is coming out of my mouth, but what is my body feeling?
Right.
Like if I'm around a certain person or if I'm in a certain situation and all of a sudden I feel exhausted or my heart rate goes way up.
Right.
Or I feel jittery or my palms start sweating or I feel agitated or I have that feeling of like I just drank caffeine on an empty stomach. For me, I can't do that. I get jittery.
Yeah.
But if I haven't had caffeine and I'm about to go into a situation and I'm starting to feel jittery, my body is speaking to me.
Yes.
My body is saying, okay, something's out of whack, something's out of balance.
Right.
Which is what happened to me about 2 months ago. And I realized something was out of balance. I was overworking myself. I wasn't taking time to rest. I'd literally get done writing a book and I'd start thinking about the next one rather than sitting back and taking sabbatical, in my mind and just enjoying what I had. But I'd go from one thing to the next and then my body started speaking.
Wow.
I started feeling agitated and my heart rate started racing. I felt a couple times like I was going to pass out, which is really weird for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a decently healthy dude. So your body is always speaking to you. So we have to pay attention. So when David prays, search me, O God, know my heart, try me, test me, know my anxious thoughts. Remember, fear is about a past or a present threat. Anxiety is about a future threat. And that threat is a threat of powerlessness. So anxiety is projecting powerlessness into the future. Our job as believers is to project power into the future.
Yeah.
And we do that for our spouse. And we project power into the future in terms of how it is with if we might be struggling with our spouse right now, and we don't think that they could ever change or we could ever change as a relationship, as a marriage, project power into the future. Don't project powerlessness.
Yeah.
No, that's a slap in God's face.
Right.
So, and then he goes and says, see if there be any hurtful way in me.
Yeah.
Like, God, put me in a struggle so I can see what's inside me.
Right.
And these hurtful things, these emotions that are deep down and they're trapped because emotion is an impulse to act. And one such emotion, and we got a question from a listener, I think, and I think we should talk about that. Do you have that question that she asked that we could read? If not, don't worry about it because I've got another one here. But when we talk about anger is an emotion with a purpose. And the purpose of anger is that God's justice is done.
Right.
So when you're feeling angry in that moment, there's been something in you that knows that justice hasn't been done. And so I had this one guy reach out to me and said, hey, so here's the deal, man. My body is, I've been feeling anxious, anxiety. It's been crazy. And I actually think that, I had almost a panic attack kind of thing. And we were talking through it. And he said that he actually took some blood work, found out he's got liver issues. And I said, well,
wow.
Anger goes to the liver.
Right.
So what have you been struggling with? What emotion? He's like, well, honestly, anger. I feel angry about this and this. And now these are legit things that he felt angry about. But in his response to that anger, he's actually masked it, buried it down, and not ever let the anger express itself.
Right.
Now, you're not ever supposed to express yourself angrily in terms of,
rage.
Screaming at people and rage. Yeah. The Bible's very clear that says, be angry, but don't sin, which means be all about God's justice, but don't be about your justice.
Yeah.
And don't be screaming, hooting, and hollering, that kind of stuff. You don't need to be doing that. But even Jesus himself got angry when the religious leaders he saw were keeping people enslaved with their terrible theology. And he's like, shut up. essentially. So this buddy of mine was struggling with this, and I knew that and from talking with him about how he wasn't, with certain people that were saying or doing things, and he was kind of just being really nice about it, but then harboring anger deep down inside.
Yeah.
So what I told him was, pent up emotion, I'm going to read this text. Pent up emotion is what hurts a lot of people. If you feel something that is righteous going on inside of you, and the emotion attached to it is anger, then there are times you should let that emotion out. Not in a crazy lunatic way where you're screaming at everybody, but your body may be telling you that you're not releasing enough of it. Then you're holding on to it inside your body and it's hurting you. So imagine if one of your sons backtalked your wife and you felt that righteous anger coming over you, but then you responded by simply being conversational and whimsical because you didn't want to offend him.
Yeah.
Right? Your body would be barking at you to stand up and put him in his place. That'd be the proper response. But if you don't respond like that, it's going to end up staying inside of your body and crushing you as a man.
Wow.
And then that anger travels down to your liver. Next thing you know, you got liver problems.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So little things like that are so incredibly important. That's why we wanted to talk more about emotions today.
Yeah. And so, I found that message from the listener. She said that she was listening to the emotional intelligence one that we released a few weeks ago about let it out, let it go, and let it happen.
Yes.
But was confused about the anger part of that.
Right.
She said there's some generational
Yeah. What do you do with anger? Do you just
stuff
let
going
it out?
on in their family, and it's like such a pull to react in anger,
Right.
for disrespect from a child or whatever it may be. But how do you, actually let it out, but do that the correct way?
That's right.
Yep.
So are you going to read the question? Or
Well, I just kind of summarized
Okay,
it.
got it. So, what's your take on that, or do you want me to give first take?
Yeah, you go ahead. Well, I think you just kind of answered that.
Yeah. Well, if I'm looking at that specifically, I think you should feel like the minute someone, especially with our kids, you need to go back and listen to the 4 phases of parenting. We talked about staying in love while parenting kids. The 4 phases of parenting. That it starts out, you start out as a babysitter, then you move to referee, then you go to coach, and then you go to teammate. And if they honor you in each stage, they can move on to the next stage. A babysitter is making sure that they don't die. A referee is the person who outlines the rules and blows the whistle when the rule has been broken.
Right.
The coach is the one who teaches you how to win in the game after you've already learned the rules. And the teammate says, we're on the same team together. Let's win together.
Right.
Right. The ultimate goal of parenting is to get to where your teammate face.
Yeah.
But if your kid is disrespectful or consistently disobedient, they're bringing you back to referee stage.
Right.
So as a referee, you have to blow the whistle. What does that look like? You're actually blowing. Think about a referee blowing a whistle. I mean, it's loud.
Right.
It's obnoxious sometimes. It's like, dang, you just threw a flag on me. Your kid's supposed to feel like what they just did not make mom or dad happy.
Right.
But if they don't know that, then that's a problem. But then on the other side, the referee doesn't go over and punch the athlete in the face.
Right.
Right. The referee doesn't go scream in the face. And so you can't just have these outbursts of anger. So letting it out is doing it in a way that's proper.
Yeah.
But yet is proper for the actual infraction. So if my son Jake disrespects Tori and we're at the dinner table, I promise you, I'm probably going to stand up. I'm going to walk his direction. I'm going to tell him to stand up. I'm going to tell him to turn around and look at his mom and apologize. Right now, that right there, I can't say that I've always done it the right way, but that right there is a proper response.
Right.
But now if she said, Jake, take out the trash, and he doesn't do it in time, or he forgets about it or something like that, well, that's a different response. It's like, Jake, what did your mom say to you? All right, buddy, now let's do it. But that could make me angry too. So it's knowing how to properly control your emotions the moment it happens.
Right.
So that you don't have just this crazy outburst, and then letting it out is a matter of just exercising discipline at the proper time.
Yeah.
I think
I think another key component is, are you reacting out of fear or responding out of love?
Oh, that's good.
And I think that when anger arises, sometimes it's actually out of fear, fear of loss of control,
Yeah.
I know for me, I actually responded using an example of myself that I used to, when the kids were little and they would ask me to do things that I'd have to say no to, it would make me so mad and angry.
Yeah.
Like I would be like, no, you can't do that. And like, it was this kind of weird, like mad reaction.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, sorry for asking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do I do that? And this is like an example of when an emotion is pointing to something. It's like, why do I get so angry every time someone asks me something that I have to say no to?
Yes.
And it's like this lack of control that I feel like I want to be able to meet my kids' needs. I want to be able to do, like, I kind of found my identity in being their mom and being their protector, the person that takes care of them, and then they're going to be mad at me because they want to do something that I don't feel like they should do. Right. And it's this lack of control. Like, wait a minute, I want to give you so much and I want to do so much for you, but stop asking me things that you're where I'm going to have to say no. And the Lord really, like, I was like, well, what is that? And the Lord really pointed, and really after I learned kind of the Enneagram and had a more understanding of myself and how I'm wired and how I respond naturally to things, like the thing that I hold on to tightest in life is peace.
Yes.
I really, really, I hold on. I almost have an obsessive bent towards peace. I want everything to be peaceful and good and well. And that song, "It Is Well With My Soul." I love it when everything is well with my soul, right? And so when something comes in the way of that thing that I hold on to so tightly, I can often react out of this lack of control for something I want so bad. And that's what was happening with me. And then the Lord began to show me, like, you need to really loosen your grip.
Yes.
Like, stop holding on to so tightly this desire for peace. And if you have to say no, it's fine. Like, do not, you're making it way bigger of a deal in your heart than it really should be.
Do you remember when she ran for president in 2012, I think it was, or 2008 maybe, Michelle Bachmann? We were having a conversation with her at a Chick-fil-A once, and Tori asked her this great question, and Michelle gave us the best parenting advice. She said, Tori asked.
She has like a lot of kids too.
And she's a doer. She's
adopted kids.
She's a great woman, Michelle Bachmann. But Tori asked about, us sometimes that we get so angry with our kids, like how do we control that and all that kind of stuff. And Michelle just looked at us, and Tori and I were sitting there, and she said, well, are you guys enforcing your rules? So, yeah, I think so. She said, because what will happen is if your kid does something that they infract a rule, like they break a rule, and you don't enforce justice immediately, then you're going to start getting angry.
Yeah.
You're going to start getting more mad. And so I realized that is true. Is like, if Tori says, Jake, I need you to do this thing to one of our sons, and he doesn't do it, and I don't say anything or deal with it right then, I tuck that little emotion away, that little anger emotion that I felt in that moment. I just tuck it away a little bit in my subconscious, not really understanding it or realizing it. And then if Jake does it again and I don't deal with it, then the emotion gets bigger, gets greater. And then if he does it again, next thing you know, I'm exploding on him.
Yeah.
All because I did not enforce the rules.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was the best advice that she could have given.
That's really good.
So what I want to do now, Tor, is I want to look at the three process. We talked about how to process emotions, specifically in terms of, our mouths are food processors so that our bodies can digest the good food and get rid of the bad, the nutrients in the food. And so we need to do the same with emotions, that we need to learn to process them. And we have let it out, let it go, let it happen. And we've talked about it in our book. We've talked about that in one of our podcasts, but I want to look at that, but take a little different spin on it. When we talk about letting it out, we're basically talking about don't hold it in. Like, don't just sit there and let emotions sit down inside you. You've got to recognize what you're feeling. So let me give you 4 little key points when it comes to letting it out. Number 1, identify what you're feeling. So this is going to expose it right away. And just identifying it, just saying, okay, so this is what I think I'm feeling.
Yeah.
This is where it's good for you and your spouse to talk with each other a lot, right? It's especially women, help your husbands here. So Tori's had to help me understand what I'm feeling.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard for a dude to be vulnerable like that, but you have to identify what you're feeling, and just exposing it like that is one of the most important ways of bringing it out. Number 2, see the end result of that feeling. What is that? Where's that feeling going to lead you to? Like if I'm feeling something, if I'm feeling like agitated, let's say I'm a twin brother, I got a twin brother and we're in business together. If I feel agitated that I did a job that maybe David should have done, but then I don't tell David that, and I feel it, but then I don't deal with it. What I need to do is when I expose that feeling, whenever I've talked through it with you, Tor, and I'm feeling agitated, then what I have to do is see the end result of that. If I keep feeling agitated, but I don't talk to David about that, that agitation is going to turn to bitterness.
Right.
And bitterness breaks relationships. And it just doesn't just break relationships, it breaks people.
Yes.
So bitterness, it starts to lodge down inside of your body, and it finds some organ that it goes to, and then it starts wreaking havoc on your physical body.
Yeah. It's literally poison.
Yeah. So you have to see the end result of that feeling. But the same is true in the reverse. It might not be a bad emotion. It might be a good one, like gratitude.
Right.
When we talked on our podcasts on how to affair-proof your marriage, if you're feeling gratitude toward another person of the opposite sex outside your marriage, and you're consistently feeling gratitude toward that person, and then you just let that thing grow, the natural outgrowth of gratitude is that it releases oxytocin and draws you close to that person.
Yep.
You got to stop thinking about that. You got to bring your spouse into that. So-and-so has complimented me the last 3 days I was at work.
Right.
Right. Bring your spouse into that, because if you feel something like that felt good, you need to recognize the end result of that feeling is ultimately going to draw you close to that person and further away from your spouse. And that's not a good thing. So in letting it out, you're identifying what you're feeling. You're seeing the end result of that feeling. Number 3, you're deciding how you're going to think about it. You're just making a decision. This is how I'm going to think about it. Which means that going back to the gratitude thing, allow that gratitude to be something that you think about with your spouse, because you know that's going to draw you closer to your spouse, but be transactional with anybody else. Yeah. It's like moving from emotional to transactional. So you're going to have to decide how you're going to think about it. You're going to be transactional. And then the final thing that I would say about letting it out is literally talking it out.
Right.
Bringing it to God, being verbal with it. I think Heather Smith, when we interviewed her and Denny a few weeks ago, and she said that her life literally changed for the better after a 2-year bout with anxiety when she started praying out loud.
Yeah.
And projecting it, like the vibration coming from her, belly to her throat and out her mouth. That's how God spoke the world into existence. And she started speaking her prayers. So talk it out to God.
Yeah.
And then talk it out to others.
Yeah. And I also think that when you're talking things out, when you have a problem that you're talking out, there at the end of that conversation, there has to be some kind of movement towards a solution. It can't just be like, okay, I just aired all of that. Now, what are we going to do about it? Am I going to have to, do I need to erect boundaries? Do I need to have a conversation with this person? But I think that so often we say all these negative things about someone to our spouse, and we just air out everything, right?
Yep.
And then it just becomes this reoccurring conversation where it's never been dealt with. There's never been a resolution.
Yeah.
Because we're not arriving at truth. Like, okay, so now what?
See, that's good you say that, because our 3-step process that we talk about, let it out, let it go, let it happen. That's how we're processing emotions. We just talked about 4 things you need to do when it comes to let it out. But that brings us right into that next step, which is let it go.
Right.
Which is, okay, so that person hurt me. That person has said this, or that person treats me this way, or whatever. And you're getting to the root of that emotion. But at some point, you do have to let it go. And when we say let it go, I mean, I hate to be cliche-ish, but it is let it go and let God. So let go and let God, where you're like, God, okay, I can't control this. Right. Because remember, anxiety is tied to a lack of control projected into the future. Like, I can't control this. I don't know how this person's going to treat me when I see him again.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to turn out in my relationship or whatever. But God, I've already processed this. I've let it out. I've talked to you about it. I've talked to my husband or my wife, whichever spouse you are. I've talked to a few very close friends, and that's it.
Right.
I didn't put it on Facebook and broadcast it. Now I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to hold on to this thing.
Right.
Which essentially what we say in the book is talking about receiving forgiveness and granting forgiveness. We have a whole different take on forgiveness. And if that's something that you have ever struggled with, receiving it or giving it, go back and listen to our podcast on forgiveness in marriage. It is something that I think will really set you free. But when it comes to letting it go, it's receive forgiveness, grant forgiveness, and then just let the sucker go.
Yeah.
And when it comes to dealing with other people, that means erecting a proper boundary. The only way that you can let things go when it deals with an emotion that's tied to the way someone treated you improperly or said something improperly is to erect a boundary.
Right.
Inside of boundary, there's freedom.
Yeah.
So you just put up proper boundaries, and one of these days we'll do a podcast fully on boundaries. So there's
I was just going to say that last week we talked about the three ways that emotions are sourced.
Yes.
And one of them was projected.
Yes.
Right. Projection.
Inherited, experienced, and projected.
And I think that's an important part of that, what you were just talking about. Let it say those,
let it out,
let it
go, let it happen.
Let it happen. I think it's really important that those emotions that may have been projected in a relationship, you have a spouse or a friend who's projecting something onto your relationship, right? That you recognize that emotion that they have projected, that you're not coming into agreement with it, that you're releasing that.
Yeah.
I just think that would have been so helpful to me many years ago if I knew the power of projected emotions.
Yeah.
You know, that just because you are having a hard day doesn't mean that I need to take that on. Just because you're angry doesn't mean that I need to take on that emotion. And I think a lot of times they manifest in different ways depending on the person. So for you, or for me, if somebody is projecting anger, then I might just clam up and just become exhausted because I'm taking on that emotion.
Right. And that's a good point, because that projected emotion can go negative or it can go positive.
Right.
That's why when Gideon was called into battle over the Midianites, the angel showed up and he said, "Greetings, O you valiant warrior." Gideon wasn't a warrior at that point. He was a farmer.
Yeah.
But that's a projected emotion.
Right.
And Gideon did rise up, and he was a valiant warrior. I think we should do that with our spouse.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
It's like, honey, I know you're struggling, but you have no idea. You've done harder things.
Yes. Yep.
You know,
that's so true.
I saw this picture of Tori. She was pregnant with our fourth, Lundy, and she was laying on the ultrasound table, and I saw the back of the nurse, and then it had Jake right up next to her head. He was hugging her and smelling her hair.
Pulling my hair. He always held onto my hair and hummed.
And then Allie was at mom's feet, or Tori's feet, and she was messing around with something. And then Trey was like, it looked like he was singing a song or something, sitting on top of the bed. But here Tori was with this massive bump on her belly, which was where Lundy was, and these three kids crawling all over her. And I'm like, you were you were a superhero.
Right.
Like in that moment, you have no idea how strong you were.
Right.
You know?
In the moment that I felt the weakest, I was so strong that I was able to keep up.
That's baller status.
A lot of respect to you mamas out there that are in the thick of it.
That's right. So our three little points: let it out, let it go, and then let it happen. Which is don't worry about the fact that don't try to stop emotion from happening. Just let it happen, and then create an environment where positive emotions can blossom. Like create an environment for peace, which means that you're gonna have to be restful. Find ways to rest. Find ways to recoup. You know, not Jesus, but God created on 6 days, and then on the seventh he recreated, which is recreated. That means rest. You know, so I'm a real estate guy. Rest for me could look like me sitting on top of a 0-turn lawnmower and mowing my lawn. But if I were a landscaper, that looks like work. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. For a landscaper, work for him would be going out and looking at real estate deals. So whatever it is, You just have to create an environment where positive emotions can flow. Don't run from the negative emotions, but make sure that you're labeling them. You're letting them out, you're letting it go, and then you're letting it happen. And what ultimately ends up happening is that you'll no longer have trapped emotions. You'll be processing things accurately. Your physical body will respond to that. Your relationships will respond to that. And it's a really, really, really powerful place to be.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You're going to wrap us up.
We're going to wrap us up with Would You Rather. We kind of went a little long on this one.
This is good, though.
Okay. Would you rather have mushroom pizza as your skin or zucchini noodles as your hair?
Well, I don't understand mushroom pizza as my skin.
Yeah, you look down at your skin and you got mushroom pizza.
Oh.
Or look at your hair and it's zucchini
I'm probably going
noodles.
to go mushroom pizza, I'm thinking.
Yep, for sure.
Hey, but by the way,
we're tracking.
Let me just say this. The gluten-free white pizza at Domino's with mushrooms on the top is banging.
It is so good. You guys, you have to try it. You would never guess that Domino's would have the best gluten-free pizza around.
But you can't get it with red sauce. You got to get it with like the garlic Parmesan sauce.
I think it's just garlic sauce, right?
I think it has
garlic butter.
Whatever it is.
I think it's garlic butter.
Yes. And then put mushrooms on it. Oh
my gosh.
I'm not joking. It is below your hair back. And you guys can thank us later for that one. So thanks for hanging out with us. Beauty in Battle. Hey, listen, rate, review, subscribe, share, whatever you want to do. But thanks for hanging out with us. We love you. And
God bless.
Have a good night.